Go started. So uh, my name is Dan Newman, and I'm going to share my screen because I've got my deck right here, and hopefully y'all can see that right now. And today, if you're here, I'm excited that we're going to ask you, what's your number one HR investment for 2021? I'm joined by two excellent, fantastic humans that I've been super thrilled to collaborate with on this presentation, and I'll let them introduce themselves in a hot second. But as we get started, this is kind of like a little bit of an assumption why you're here. So, welcome to the future. This is why we think that you're here. We think you're here because you want to learn how to make smarter decisions using data. You want to know how to materially integrate diversity and inclusion into your 2021 plans. And you want to be more effective in prioritizing the right decisions. This is what we kind of assume that you're here for, and we are thrilled to kind of share what we've assembled about it. And who is the we? Well, I'm joined by two excellent co-panelists, and I'll let them introduce themselves. First, Jen Paxton. Who are you? What's your story?
Hi, I'm Jen Paxton. I am from a company called Privy. We are about 65 people. We help small and medium-sized e-commerce businesses grow their sales. And I've been doing HR and recruiting for almost 10 years now at various startups around the Boston area.
Excellent. And Cristina.
Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Cristina Costa. I am the head of the career program at Outco, which is a San Francisco-based startup, and we work with job-seeking engineers. So I actually train job-seeking engineers on their emotional intelligence, confidence, negotiation skills. We also provide training for technical skills like algorithms, whiteboarding, reviews, anything like that. I'm also a career coach on the side. I really just love empowering people with the skills to succeed personally and professionally and reach that next level in your professional career. Lastly, D&I has been a passion of mine. So diversity and inclusion has been a passion of mine for the past 7 years. I've worked at numerous amounts of startups and large companies, started employee resource groups, have given D&I trainings, and it's just really something that I am passionate to share with all of you today. So nice to meet you guys.
And I'm Dan. I run Learn to Scale. Learn to Scale is a coaching and consultancy business aimed at helping people in employee experience, employee engagement, learning development, find more effective ways of engaging the employees that they work with. It's a little bit of kind of professional training and coaching. I run some coaching programs. I do some on-demand training, but all focused on helping employee engagement professionals be the best that they can be. So thinking about 2021, there's a lot where employee engagement, this is like your time to shine. And I'm excited to share some of the insights that I have, as well as Jen has and Cristina has, about how you can prepare and invest wisely for 2021. So that's who we are. And so in your near future, in this next 55 minutes, we are going to break it down into 3 big categories and then a lot more. So we're going to first start off with Jen. She's going to talk a bit about numbers and data and ways that you can use data effectively. Then Cristina is going to take the helm and talk about how you can invest in diversity and inclusion and how that increases psychological safety, which is going to be, I mean, it should have been a big deal like 20 years ago, but it's definitely a big deal today and next year in 2021. Then I'll come back and talk a little bit about solving the right problems to make sure that your strategies, your priorities make sense so that you can really have a big impact, the biggest impact that you need for next year. And then at the end, we have oodles of giveaways and freebies and fun stuff, as well as a sexy infographic. So please stick around because we have things to give you about this. That being said, I just want to give a little frame about kind of this whole thing put together, because blended is the new normal. And I was doing some yoga this morning just to kind of like get myself in shape for doing this webinar. And, I noticed that my right hand is clearly a lot stronger than my left hand. I'm a right hand kind of guy. And when I think about this webinar and think about kind of the place that HR, talent, is in is that a lot of people have a lot of strength in their right arm, also known as their in the office culture, they're in their office processes. How do they do things in the office? But their little left arm, the remote work thing, we've been seeing that be a little limp. So blended is the new normal, but the trend, you really need to make sure that your weak, limp remote arm is as effective as it can be. And so a lot of the strategies we're going to be talking about today help you kind of gird the strength in that remote working world, and that when they're pumping together, I'm sorry, I'm holding a microphone. Let me put this here. When they're pumping together, then you're blended. Sorry, I just was really excited to make that metaphor. So organizations, businesses today, employee retention and engagement is going to be what differentiates successful businesses from the ones that just kind of wither and die. So whatever you do for 2021, if you don't remember anything else about this webinar, you need to make sure your workplace is welcoming, remote accessible, and engaging for your remote workers. So let's just do a little straw poll and see. There are now 31 people in this webinar right now. And I want to ask you, what's your biggest priority for 2021? If you head to slido.com and you put in the code INVEST, then you'll be able to submit an open response that'll pop up on the screen right now. You can use your telephonic device and take a picture of that QR code, or just head to slido.com on whatever internet thingamajigger that you're playing with right now, and put in that code INVEST and type in your answer, and it'll pop right up. Retention, number 1. Yes. Yes. Whoever submitted that, retention. Yes. Revenue growth. Excellent. I'm going to talk about that during my section about why HR problems always seem to miss the revenue targets. What else? What are some big priorities for 2021? Retention, DEI, establishing a clear performance management development system. Oh, that plays my bones. Creating a community for our employees. Yes, especially if you have a blended workplace. You got the people on site, you got the people remote. How do you all play together? Reducing employee stress, remote candidate engagement, DEI and belonging, manager development, person growth, I assume personal growth, or maybe just person growth. Maybe you're just getting taller. That's great. DEI, employee engagement, mentorship program, continuing to build a strong culture and measure with metrics. This is fantastic. You all are amongst a tribe. We are all thinking about these kinds of things. There's definitely some themes. So you're surely going to get something out of this webinar. I'm going to now turn it over to Jen to talk a little bit about data. And Jen, this is your time now. This is your place.
All right, can everybody see my screen? Okay. Awesome, great. So Dan called me like the queen of data, and I kind of laughed at that, but I think I just love data so very much, and I was thinking about this, and data can be the people ops leader's best friend. It really can. So I just wanted to start off sharing a little bit of data for everybody here and talk through, why even care about data in the first place. So when Dan came to me, I already actually had this Tiny Pulse survey in the back of my head, but Tiny Pulse basically surveyed 25,000 employees from around the world in 2018 and came back with some pretty interesting data. For me, it wasn't like this aha moment of data, but more of a confirmation of what I've heard in candidate or employee exit interviews, as well as like candidate conversations, why they're even looking for a new role. So Tiny Pulse said that employees with a good work-life balance are actually 10% more likely to stay at companies. Even right now, burnout is really real, and it's going to occur even more often. So for us to be able to manage and really actively manage employees' work life, hopefully that will lead them to not leaving our company. And then in addition to that, I've heard it said many, many times that employees leave companies for bad bosses. So Tiny Pulse's survey also mentioned that employees are 4 times more likely to look for a new job. 4 times more likely to look for a new job if they don't have a trusting relationship with their manager. 40% of the employees that they surveyed actually who rated their supervisor low looked for a job within the last 3 months, which I thought was like crazy. And then lastly, employees who don't feel supported professionally or having professional growth are three times more likely to look for a new job. So Tiny Pulse's survey said 21.5% of employees surveyed didn't feel like they were recognized at all, which is really sad to me. Like, so I was thinking through and being like, if there was a way for us to uncover these situations ahead of time and prevent this turnover, why would we want to do it? So I was going to ask this as like a question of like, hey, if you could do this, wouldn't you want to? And see if anybody would say no. If you were thinking, no, I don't want this, then like we should totally have words after. But investing in employees, it's challenging, right? There's no one size fits all for any organization. So you really need to start collecting data to see, what improvements you need to make, and then build an investment plan off of that data. This has been proven, to me at least, the most effective way for me to have happier and more productive employees. So I'm going to share a little bit about what we do. So we send employees a survey every quarter to see how they're doing. And we really focus on three themes. One is a trusting relationship with our company and our company strategy and our leaders, a strong relationship with their managers. So are they feeling recognized? Are they feeling supported? And then, what else can we as a company do to just keep supporting them even more? So quick tips on this to make your survey most effective. So we do a very short survey. We have 11 quantitative questions, which employees can rate from a 1 to 10 scale, and then 5 qualitative questions that are open-ended. And we actually rotate them based on manager feedback as well as employee, like previous employee survey feedback. And we're able to have a blended mix so we can focus on really the questions that we want answered. And it takes employees about 10 minutes to do. If it's over 10 minutes, employees are a lot less likely to actually do it. So having it be 10 minutes or less is kind of a win-win for us too. And then the other factor in our surveys is that we keep it anonymous-ish. So we do have departments listed as required. We've toyed with the idea of making it optional as well. But the reason that we kind of had kept it required was that we wanted to see trends that might be forming within specific departments. And then that leads me actually to the last part is, if you're gonna send a survey out, employees are gonna want to know, how are you using this survey, and also how are you sharing out this data. So we at Privy share out a fully anonymized version of the results to the entire company, every single one, and we give it to them in our all company, our all hands meeting, and then we share out the specific department data with the department heads and the managers in there, so they know exactly kind of what key areas they're going to focus on and want to improve upon. I will be giving Dan all of these questions as well, or actually Dan already has these questions, so he can give this to you in the kind of handout afterwards. But if you have any questions on like why we came up with the questions we did, or what question is maybe the most valuable, happy to kind of dig into that at a later date too. I figured right now I'd just go through and analyze a little bit of the data just to kind of give you a framework of how we've been using the questions and the answers and kind of making that into action. So as I mentioned, we do a mix of quantitative and qualitative questions. Quantitative data is really just for us to see kind of the trends that are happening over time and really helping us to see if we're moving the needle really one way or the other. But the really juicy stuff, like the really good stuff, like stuff I get so excited about, came from the open-ended questions. And so that's in the qualitative data. So I want to walk you just through 2 examples very quickly, and then we'll go from there. So the first example I want to give is, I kind of think of it as almost low-hanging fruit, but having benefits that employees want. So a good question that you're probably starting off asking yourself is, are our benefits competitive? Or the programs that we're offering competitive and kind of what employees actually want? So we just asked our employees, what are we missing? What are our gaps here? And our employees came back with pretty much a laundry list of all the different things that you could ask. And so what I thought about was, all of this is really coming in a vacuum, and maybe 1 to 2 employees might have suggested 401k match, but other employees might want it as well. So what we're going to do next after having kind of all of this raw data is getting a poll together to actually see, what are maybe the top 3 things employees want. So if, 75% of our employees wanted a 401k match, but 50 sets wanted, a work from home stipend. So we can kind of weigh what our options are and get kind of the most bang for our budget. Feel like
I want to add in here, this is an awesome way of also demonstrating that you take action on the feedback. It's not saying like you submitted a survey and nobody sees what's happening. It's people then see their suggestions and represented in the follow-up poll. And that shows that you're taking action on things.
Yeah. And to that point, Dan, even in our presentation, if there are things that we're already working on, we're going to go ahead and give employees a heads up being like, hey, we've heard your feedback. This is kind of our roadmap and our plan. And then if it is something we're not working on yet, then being able to show them that we are actually listening to their feedback and providing those actionable insights, we want to make sure we're doing that in the future too. And if you're like me with these specific kind of laundry lists, and I'm working on a very small budget here, you really need to know kind of what is that, maybe that one thing that you can invest in. So just pulling your employees to find that out is the easiest way I've seen, at least. And then the other one I want to talk through is just looking for themes in the comments. I mentioned like the juicy stuff comes from what the words that people say. And one of our kind of key ops goals at Privy, at least, is to have happier employees. Countless surveys have been correlating employee happiness to productivity. I'm pretty sure Christine is going to talk about that even more in her slides. But we just wanted to ask employees straight up, what's going to make you happier and more productive working at Privy? And we got so many comments on this one. Like, if I had to pick one question, the open-ended question, this might actually be it. We got so many questions back that it took up 3 slides with our final presentation. So, but a lot of those actually came into 2 big themes for us. So one of them is stress management, mental health, and wellness. Employees are feeling really stressed right now. I mean, could be because we're in a pandemic. I don't know. I think it's because we're in a pandemic, let's be honest. But I think employees could be stressed anyway. And they really are craving, tools and resources that are going to help them with their stress management, their mental health, their well-being. So I saw this actually come in our last quarterly pulse survey, which we just did a few weeks ago. And it was like an alarm bell went off from me, basically being like, if this many people are saying this right now, I need to go to finance immediately and tell them, we need to do something right now. We can't wait until 2021. So I think I let the kind of themes of the comments and the amount of comments come in also drive my urgency. And so we actually have a resiliency week going on this week we have meditation, we have a mindfulness session, we have an actual professor coming in to talk about resiliency during a pandemic. So this is just kind of one thing where urgency can really matter, especially if you're having so many of the same kind of themes over and over again. And then the last theme here is more along the lines of collaboration among departments, which I'm not surprised about, because when you go remote, we could talk about this for a very long time, but when you go remote, there can be a little bit of a lapse in collaboration. So we're working on that one too. And that's going to be a little bit of a more strategic thing. So the key takeaway, and like the last thing I'm going to say, is ultimately you want to go to your CEO, your CFO, or your finance team with the confidence that you are going to be like, what you're asking for is really going to be beneficial for employees. So I would just advise that if you can back all that up with data, you're going to do great. Like, it's going to be fine. So that's the last thing I'll say.
All right. Thanks, Jen. We're going to hand it over to Cristina now to talk a little bit more about psychological safety. I mean, it's the theme of 2021, right?
The theme of the life. All right. Thank you so much for that, Jen. Let me share my screen with you all, and I will start. And just so you guys know, I appreciate questions, comments, things like that. So if you do have a question, you can either unmute yourself and ask, or write it in the chat. So I appreciate participation. So let's get started. So how investing in diversity and inclusion increases psychological safety. Don't worry, I'll be breaking down all of these terms for you guys in this presentation. All right, so first and foremost, this is a big hot topic, right? Everybody's talking about diversity and inclusion right now, with the amount of Black Lives Matters movements and everything happening politically in our world. This is obviously of top priority for a lot of businesses right now. So let's talk about why, right? So what is diversity and inclusion? So diversity, as you can see on the right hand, refers to differences such as race, ethnicity, gender, age, religion, language, abilities, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, geographic regions. I mean, there's so many things that go into diversity, right? So many different aspects that can create a diverse workforce. So diversity essentially is being invited to the party, and inclusion is being invited to dance, right? So you need both pieces in order to create a truly psychologically safe environment. Inclusion refers to cultural and environmental feeling of belonging, right? It can be assessed as to the extent to which employees feel valued, respected, accepted, encouraged, right? And fully supported at an organization. So in the context of the workplace, diversity equals representation, but without inclusion, the crucial connections that attract diverse talent, encourage their participation, foster innovation, and lead to business growth won't happen. So you need to have both. So we have all the HR people in the room right now, so you guys should know the answer to this question. What is the biggest expense to any company in any industry? You can type it in the chat. Actually, let me open up my chat. People, yep. And what do people do? I'm gonna give it to you guys. Labor, right? That is the number one expense in every company. The reason I'm bringing this up is because workplace culture drives turnover significantly, right? And this will affect the retention of a lot of unrepresented groups and costing actually the tech industry in this last year alone more than $16 billion, right? And just this type of lack of retention. So did you know that labor can account for as much as 70% of total business costs, which include employee wages, benefits, payroll, and taxes, right? So I just put a few stats in there. It's actually from a study called the Tech Leaver Study. It's a first of its kind national study examining why people voluntarily left their jobs in tech. The Kapor Center surveyed a sample of more than 20,000 US adults who have left their jobs in tech. And literally, this is what they said. 57% of tech leavers said they would have stayed at their companies if their prior employer had created a fair and inclusive environment. That is a huge percentage. 78% of tech leavers reported experiencing unfair behavior or treatment. And then the one on the left is something that women have been dealing with forever, right? 1 in 10 women reported experiencing unwanted sexual attention in their prior jobs, right? So these are a lot of the reasons people leave their roles. All right, now I want to move on to what is psychological safety, right? Some of you might be thinking, what exactly does that mean? All this kind of stuff. So psychological care and safety is the ability to show and employ oneself without fear of negative consequences or status or career, right? It can be defined as a shared belief that the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. So in psychologically safe teams, team members will feel more accepted, respected, and they'll be more productive, right? So when you create a psychologically safe environment, you're comfortable sharing your feedback. You're comfortable learning from failure, sharing ideas openly, which leads to more innovative decisions, right? I'm actually really curious. I want to hear from you guys. I want you to think back to a time when you felt most psychologically safe in a workplace. Write in the chat, why did you feel this way? What made you feel this way? I'm curious, what made you feel psychologically safe when you felt that? Yeah, my manager showed trust in me. My best friend at work had my back. I felt heard, right? Trust and transparency. I trusted my boss to take risks. For me, it was a manager that was really supportive, right? For me, it was a manager that really felt like he understood me and wanted to support me in every way that he could, and he wasn't micromanaging. He was very trusting. Right? That was my experience. Mario says, trust from my manager. I felt cherished by my boss and organization, accepts my mistakes, right? So all of these things that you guys are stating means that you felt psychologically safe, whether that was with that manager or that company or the team, whatever it was, right? This is what we're all looking for, especially now, especially during a pandemic, especially as we're all remote and we don't get to see each other anymore, right? So this is the reality. So Essentially, what does an inclusive workplace look like? An inclusive workplace is one that values individual differences in the workforce, makes individuals feel welcome and accepted, right? An inclusive workplace has actually invested effort to not only recruit people who might otherwise be excluded, right, due to factors such as age, race, color, gender, socioeconomic status, right? And understanding that every single person brings a unique experience and background to their place of work. This is actually your culture ad, right? This is actually an addition to the company. Psychological safety promotes diversity of thinking and areas to fail and learn. At the end of the day, employee performance will improve as a result of creating more psychologically safe workplaces, right? So let's talk a little bit more about what that looks like. So really simple, right? Happy employees equals higher engagement, higher retention rates, essentially higher productivity, right? You guys probably all agree with me. The places where you felt most psychologically safe, you probably did your best work at those places. Actually, put a yes in the chat if you did your best work in those places. Yeah, right? I just don't get why companies don't see that. Like, it's common sense. Like, make your employees happier and they'll do better for you. So big reasons for turnover, right? The main reasons: toxic work culture is number one, bad management, right? I don't know if you guys have heard the saying, people don't leave their jobs, they leave management, which is facts, right? Lack of engagement, feeling overworked, lack of career development, lack of recognition for work, right? So in McKinsey and Company's report, Why Diversity Matters, companies in the top quartile for gender or racial and ethnic diversity were more likely to have financial returns above their national industry median. The data actually demonstrated that when companies commit themselves to diversity and building inclusive spaces, they are better able to attract top talent, improve employee satisfaction, make better decisions, and be much more customer oriented. Okay, so you're probably thinking at this point, how can I do this, right? How can I initiate D&I at my diversity and inclusion at my company? We don't have it. Maybe it's something you're really passionate about and you want to spark that. So here are just some suggestions for you to start. As more women, racial and ethnic minorities, LGBTQ individuals, veterans, people with disabilities enter the workforce, organizations are now challenged to find new ways to create more dynamic workplaces, right? We want to be able to better engage our employees and drive innovation. So you can start, as Jen mentioned, measuring employee engagement, right? Through surveys. It could be through surveys. It could be through making sure you have exit interviews, understanding why people are leaving your company, making sure you have solid feedback loops with management, right? Really understanding the relationships with management and their employees, and understanding how psychologically safe your current employees feel. Number two, determine D&I priorities for improvement, right? So set clear goals. Is it higher retention? Do you want to improve retention? Do you want to promote more diverse candidates? And what does that look like? Do you want to recruit more diverse candidates? And how much, what percentage should be of a diverse background? Who needs to be involved? This one's huge, right? It needs to be from the top down. So your C-suite, your executives, they need to be on board to make this truly successful, right? They are the ones with the decision-making abilities. They are the one controlling the money, right? So they need to be included in this, as well as head of human resources, right? This is definitely an HR branch, and they should be involved. Number four, if you do want to start at a grassroots level, develop employee resource groups, right? I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that is. But determine objectives for the groups. Don't just develop groups to have groups, but what are the objectives, right? What do we want to accomplish with these groups? And lastly, if there are people running these groups, great, but they should be compensated, right? And I'm saying this because I've run many ERGs where I was not compensated and I was putting in a ton of work and hours, and time is money, people. So, okay, so quickly, I'm going to talk about ERGs. So employee resource groups, right? They are a great way to foster an inclusive workplace, and even remotely. ERGs are generally employee-led groups that are based on similar traits that group members possess. Some common ERGs could be women's groups, LGBT groups, pride groups, parents groups, Latino groups, whatever it is, right? Whatever is a priority for your company. So the first thing I'd recommend is definitely start identifying potential gaps that you can bridge in your company, right? Is there maybe like parents feel really excluded, or maybe women are not being promoted and there's a big issue with retention, right? How can you start solving some of these issues by creating these groups, right? You could even, host virtual webinars or lunches and really encourage your employees to attend. Essentially, this is offering a safe place for employees to meet, connect, learn from one another, and essentially build meaningful connections and empathy. This is huge, right? This is what the world needs more of in general. It's just more empathy and understanding. We're a lot more similar than you think. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, in the next slide, just steps for setting up an ERG if you're interested in it. So number one, have a clear expectation to the group's role, right? As well as the potential impact you can make in the organization. Number two, work with the group to create a mission statement together, right? And goals it hopes to achieve. It shouldn't just be one person making all of the decisions, right? It should be a group effort. Number three, it should be voluntary. So people should want to be interested in the cause, right? Don't force participation, because you don't want to cause animosity and stress. You want people to want to be there, right? And contribute. Number four, set benchmarks to monitor the success of the group. And five, encourage C-suite and non-members to participate, right? When I created an ERG, one of my first ERGs at HubSpot, we encouraged allies to attend our People of Color group, People of Color at HubSpot group, right? And sometimes the CEO would attend and other C-suite executives. So my last slide, I swear I'm done, Dan. I know I went over. I talk a lot. My last slide is, these are some of the biggest benefits of workplace diversity, right? And inclusion. So I really hope that you continue to advocate for this in your workplace, because we need as many people and allies as possible to advocate. Gartner research found that 20% increase in organizational inclusion increases the on-the-job effort by nearly 7%. More inclusive organizations also receive a 5% increase in employee loyalty and nearly a 5% increase in individual employee performance overall, right? So at the end of the day, diversity and inclusion, creating psychologically safe workplaces is going to benefit your business. So I hope this was helpful. I'm going to pass it off to Dan.
Thanks, Cristina.
Yeah, of course. And if you have questions, let me know.
So I'm gonna take the microphone now and talk a little bit about solving the right problems. And Camilla actually asked a great question earlier in the chat, and it kind of sets up the frame for what I'm going to be talking about. So I'm going to be talking about a gap analysis and solving the right problems. And for everyone in HR, and frankly, everyone at a business, you have limited resources and you may not have as big of a budget as you wished you had. And you want to be able to have a big impact. Now, you have limited resources. How do you leverage them effectively? Well, a gap analysis is the first step in making sure that your resources are allocated appropriately so that you do have that biggest impact. You might not be able to have the ultimate impact, but you can have the best that you can have with the resources that you're given. So, excellent. So a gap analysis is a process by which you identify the biggest, the most important, and the most urgent problems that are worth solving. It is taking stock of the whole menu of things that you could be spending your time and your limited HR budget on, and making sure that you're allocating it appropriately so that you are really making the biggest bang that you can at all. So one of the problems that I've seen, I've done a lot of coaching and working with people who deliver projects, and people end up solving the wrong problems with their projects, especially in the HR space, because some of the stuff we deal with is just kind of like fuzzy. And it's hard to say like this project will solve that problem. So there's two big symptoms that I see is people solve the wrong problems by either not doing a gap analysis and just skipping the whole thing and just going with the gut. And you go with the gut and say like, this seems like the right project to do. And you end up solving the wrong problem. Or you get stuck in doing a gap analysis. And then you spend so much time measuring iotas of this one versus that one and this and that. And you stay so focused that you don't actually get much done. Or you lose focus on the bigger issue and you lose focus on what's really important. So this is how it manifests. And just drop in the chat if you're like, yep, seen this. Yep, this sounds familiar. So have you ever been asked by an executive or by some senior leader and said, hey, we need training. We need training, and nobody does a gap analysis. And then you see training in search of a problem. Training in search of a problem, which is I developed this great emotional intelligence training. Who needs it? And then you start asking, like, who needs this training? And you're trying to find the problem that this training is designed to solve. You might have pet project syndrome, where the chief sales officer says, hey, we need to train our business development reps to sell better, says the chief sales officer. And all the other projects kind of get tossed by the wayside because someone just said, like, this is kind of a big deal to my team. Or do you have flash in the pan impact, where you do a program, you do a project, and it doesn't really have an impact beyond the first month? It just kind of disappears, and it's as if it never happened 3 months later. The other side, if you get stuck in the gap analysis, you do a lot of reports and got a lot of data. You send out those pulse surveys that Jen said, and you got some really great charts, and you got some analytics, and all your time is spent putting together the charts and not actually doing the projects and the programs. So HR does a lot of reports that go nowhere. Or project by politics, where you do the projects that you think other people will agree to. They may not have the biggest impact, but you're like, hey, all these people would say yes to our new, applicant tracking system. But what you really need is a new human resources information system. Then there's the huge impact that drives zero revenue. And it's something that HR often does. They lose focus that they are supporting the business. Now, you can have people walk out really understanding their true selves and being like spiritually awake and, being decent human beings. But at the end of the day, if your business isn't benefiting from the time and investment, then it's a huge impact, not really driving revenue. And yes, I know someone's gonna be like, but if they're happy, they're more likely to stay. It's almost like the other two presenters I had would say that. But it's true. If you can connect your project to retention, that's driving revenue. But if you're driving your impact to smiles, that is not part of that whole picture. You really got to connect the dots, especially for your senior executives. So when you're looking at events are temporal gaps, key moments in an employee's life cycle. They're things that happen all the time. You kind of be like, I know this is going to come up. You can point your finger at it and say, this is going to happen. I've got a really nifty infographic about this. So just send me a message if you want it afterwards about the employee life cycle and things you can do in that. And one moment in every new hire's life is their first day. It's new hire onboarding. Every new hire experiences it. It has a significant impact on employee engagement and retention. Don't need to convince HR people there. It's repeatable and it's scalable, because every time you have someone come in, you're going through the same process. They're having the same experience. And as you get big, it's got to scale. And it's an intersection of systems and people. And you got the systems, like making sure that things are processed, things are logged, things are et cetera. But you also have, the manager having a conversation with their new hire. There's the trainer delivering the new hire onboarding. So it's this great intersection of all this stuff. So you sit down and say, all right, we're going to do a gap analysis of new hire onboarding. There's all these different stages. There's all these things that could be problems. There's the offer letter, making sure it's generated, sent out, all the approvals. There's communication before the first day. There's getting the right equipment for that new hire's, first day. Their actual first day. What is the event schedule? What kind of things do they experience on their first day? What does their first week look like? What is their first one-on-one with their manager? These are all potential gaps. Now, y'all are HR people, and you might be talking with your managers and you think, oh my gosh, some of my managers are just not humans. They're not good at talking to humans. Their one-on-ones with new hires are just pathetic. I think we need to do something about that. And you know what? They also don't talk to their new hires at all before, they show up. That's totally a gap, right? Well, that's what your gut tells you. But you step back, you do a gap analysis and realize you have this insanely manual process of generating offer letters, this insanely manual process of figuring out the right equipment to get to the new hire at a certain destination. You sink hours and hours and hours into this. And all that time can be automated. It can be figured out in a way that allows you to then focus on your first one-on-one with a manager and the communication before their first day. So that gap analysis, it changes the priorities. Some things that go into a gap analysis, you ask a bunch of kind of clarifying questions. You identify, is this problem going to be soon or someday? Is it one person or is it a lot of people? Is the impact like a forever type of impact, or it's just a very short term? Executive interest, business problem. Does the problem nibble at time, or does it gorge, like just suck your entire week when it comes up? Another thing that a lot of people kind of miss in a gap analysis is this a systems problem, or is it a people problem? Is it a systems, like we don't have the right tools, or is it a people problem because people just don't have the skills or the talking points to do it? And then you, as the person doing a project, are you a systems person? Are you really good at the system stuff? Or are you really good at the people stuff? The thing that a lot of people miss is they forget themselves as part of that whole gap analysis, as well as your own personal investment in the project. So this is all captured in the handout that I'll be showing to you hot soon. But everything I just talked about, I said I created some on-demand content. My first course, my on-demand course, is called the Quick and Dirty Gap Analysis, and it goes through basically what I just covered, but a lot more. And if you stick around, I got a freebie about this particular course, so just stick around. Just stick around because we want to get to the recap. The recap's the best part. But it'll be at bit.ly/solvebetterproblems. So now let's talk about some takeaways. We had 3 different people come up to you and present. Jen talked a lot about the data, the pulse survey questions, sending follow-ups, allocating your budget based off of trends in the data. Cristina talked about psychological safety and inclusivity, how happy employees is higher retention and more productivity. Employee resource groups need those objectives. They need compensation to be sustainable. And I talked a bit about gap analysis. Talked a bit about the too much or the not at all. Key events in the employee's life cycle. I saw some people want that infographic. I'll totally connect you with that. And there's lots of ways that you can measure a gap. So, metacognitive question, friends. Head back to slido.com, and I want to ask, what's maybe something you learned or changed your mind on, or maybe want to explore a little bit further based on what we talked about today. So if you just joined us, slido.com, you put in the code INVEST, and this question comes up. What is one thing you learned, change your mind on, want to explore further? Pulse surveys, sweet. This is going to be a word bubble. I'm kind of curious to see how this is going to like populate and see which words come up the most. So go to slido.com, put in code INVEST. So what's one thing you learned, change your mind on, want to explore further? These are the kinds of things that we're talking about. Psychological safety, data, pulse surveys, gap analysis, psychological safety. Yep. What else? What's something that you learned, or maybe you changed your mind on? Maybe you want to think about this more. Head to slido.com, participate. I know you're in the splash zone. There's 35 people in this Zoom. So we're gonna get a good number of responses here. Psychological safety, big, nice. Ooh, Cristina, you hit on a hot button here. Nice. ERGs, employee resource group, gap analysis, pulse surveys. Yes, this is recorded. I changed your mind on it being recorded. Yes. Budget, good. Psychological safety, still a front runner. What else? ERGs, yeah. Explore further, change your mind on. Maybe you're like, ERGs, the new hotness. I mean, it's not new, but it's certainly hotness.
That's exciting.
Yeah. Sweet. What else? You can put in multiple responses too. If you're like me and you're like a quintessential learner and you're just like, oh, I want to learn. This is totally a place you can drop as many things you want to learn more about. Learn better through good infographics. Yeah, totally connected with infographics. Yes. Good.
I love it.
Yeah. Sweet. Okay. So I want to make sure we get to the Q&A. This is great. I love that psychological safety ERGs are popular because all this stuff, we made this nifty little infographic. It's a 2-page infographic because it's the internet and I can make infographics with 2 pages. And if you go to learntoscale.us and head to /invest wisely, and I'll drop the link here into the chat, or maybe my co-presenters will, because I have to put my microphone down and I lost my microphone stand. I'm really good at forgetting where things go.
I will find.
Okay, yeah, there it is. Invest wisely. Head there, Marios.
Thank you.
Thank you. you can download this infographic that we covered all this, and it has a ton of questions on page 2 that you can use in your next pulse survey. Oh, there's tons of questions. And Cristina, Outco is doing something special too. You want to talk a little bit about the referral program and the diversity and inclusion assessment?
Yes, of course. So as you all know, I work at Outco, which is a career and technical training program for job seeking engineers. I know there are a lot of HR folks, potentially technical recruiters in here. If you are looking to set up some referrals to our program, you can make some money. So check out actually, I think I put it in the chat, but I will put it in again. The link for that referral program. And then lastly, Amplify is an amazing organization that actually has created a free diversity assessment platform that you can use for your own company. You don't have to pay for it. It's actually free right now. And it tells you like survey questions. It helps you set up, the kind of diversity pulse check for where you are right now and help you kind of assess what are the priorities for your company. So check it out. That's also included on that website, the link to that. So please check it out because it's a really cool free tool and resource that you can start using.
And I, of course, am also going to be offering out a freebie too. So I know it's like starting to become close to Thanksgiving, and I talked about the quick and dirty gap analysis. I have been speaking to a lot of people, and they said, this would be super duper handy as we're putting together our end of the year budgets and our end of year planning. So I'm actually going to make it free for all of you for attending. If you go in and sign up and put in the code, "The Future Is Now," as your coupon code, then you can get forever access for free. That code expires on Friday. So go in just like right now, bit.ly/solve-better-problems, click the big button in the middle of the page and put in the code "The Future Is Now," and then you'll have it for free. And the reason why this is free is because I asked my partner, Hannah, and I was like, hey, I think this would be good for people. She said, just give it to them. Just give it to them for free. So you can thank Hannah for that free course. I had a ton of fun putting together the course too. And it's part 1 of a 6-course process. So go in, see if you like it, costs nothing, and see if that helps you find better problems. Okay. That's that. At this point, we want to open the floor to questions. All the links we talked about are there. There's our emails if you want to email us to tell us how great Dan's haircut is. But we're happy to take some questions. And you can feel free to unmute yourself and shout it out. Or if you want to drop it in the chat, we'll try and answer it there. And I did see a question pop in. Camilla, you were asked a question. Can you share examples of how you can use a D&I council to increase recruitment of diverse talent? What measures do you put in place if you see if your efforts are working? So what's the data feedback? Do you have specific rules you use during your recruitment process? That's a big question. I don't know, Jen or Cristina, do you want to talk about D&I council around recruitment of diverse hires?
Either way, I mean, I can talk about what our team does, if that's okay. Christina, and you want to jump in after?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually answered Camilla, but so our DEI team has been a great help on the recruiting side. One of our goals is actually to have better representation at the top of the funnel for recruiting. So they've helped with sourcing as well as finding new job boards that actually target women and minorities. And then in addition to that, they've really kept us accountable for showing more transparency on who is applying to our jobs right now, and what are we doing to make sure that we're effectively getting more like people of color, specifically for us, through our funnel as well. So that's kind of what they've been really targeting. And then additional to that, we've been working with a lot more partners as well, just to get our broaden our network.
I would say, just from my experience with the recruitment process, so it says, do you have specific rules to use during your recruitment process to ensure you're being conscious of diversity of hires? So this goes back to figuring out what are the goals of your company, right? If the goals are to recruit more diverse candidates, like what percentage do you want to hit? Like what number do you want to hit? And then once you hit that number, or once you determine, 20% of new hires need to come from diverse backgrounds. And what does that mean? What does diverse backgrounds mean, right? Because diversity is not just Black and brown people bringing them in and having them in like entry level positions, right? Diversity is also diversity of experience, socioeconomic status, age, right? There's a lot, especially in the tech industry, as I'm sure many of you guys agree, there's a lot of ageism going on, right? There's a lot of like new grad, like I worked at a company that everybody was like 21. I was like 30 and I felt so out of place. And I was like, oh my God, what's going on? Right. So diversity of experience is also extremely important to making a business as innovative and successful as possible. So figuring out like what percentage, right? And then after that, what does diversity mean? Like, where are you guys lacking? Like, what don't you have enough of? And then really, really opening up the pools of candidates, potential candidates. Like, stop looking at the normal, like, the high Ivy League universities, right? Let's start being more diverse about where we look for talent. There's a lot of talent coming from boot camps. There's a lot of talent coming from community colleges. There's a lot of talent coming from state schools. A lot of talent coming from a lot of organizations out there, like Amplify Latinx, like Techeria, like Latinas in Tech, like I can list a bunch, right? Like Resilient Coders, like She Geeks Out, like Women Who Code, like there's just so many, right? It's like, are you putting the effort to find them, right? And that's where this whole thing comes into play, right? Because the talent is there. It's, are you putting in the effort to find it, or are you looking at the same pools of people, right? So that's one piece. Somebody asked about, oh my gosh, there's so many DEI questions. Okay, so somebody asked, how do you start one when your organization doesn't have a lot of diversity at the moment? Yeah, so maybe you feel like, I've been there, Angel. I've been the one where I was the only one. And I was like, okay, so what am I going to do? So first and foremost, you can start by having conversations. If there are any other diverse, employees, you can just start by having genuine conversations with them, asking them, hey, like, if I started an ERG on this type of group, I don't know, women's group or pride group or a Latino association, whatever it is, like, ask them, would you be willing to participate? Do you feel like this is something that may add value, right? It will make you feel more included and like create a safer space for you. And then start encouraging HR. If you're not, I'm assuming you work in HR, but if you don't, really encourage HR to see the value in this and let them know that this is how you're feeling, right? You're feeling like you wish there was more diversity. You wish that you could have a more diverse workforce, right? And if it doesn't come from you guys, it doesn't come from you, who's gonna stand up for it, right? So that would be my suggestion there, Angel. And if you feel alone, I've been there with you before. And of course,
so to add in so I've worked with some recruiting teams who have developed underrepresented minority bonuses, which is kind of a dicey topic. Like, that could be a topic for another webinar about, URMs and using that to incentivize bringing in people from diverse backgrounds. But it is a tactic out in the marketplace to bring in people from non-traditional backgrounds and compensate the referrers. Referrals tend to actually drive better higher rates, higher retention. Someone has skin in the game to make sure they're successful. So incentivizing them to bring in people from non-traditional backgrounds is another way of increasing it, but it does get complicated. You don't want to make sure you're kind of like, pay to play and head hunting for collecting Pokemon, but it is a strategy.
Yeah. I would also say Allison. Hi, Allison. That's my girl. So I would say for people looking for being compensated, right? This is actually a conversation I recently had with one of my mentees because she does a lot at her company, and now she's also leading their Latino ERG on top of all the other work she already does. And I know because I've been in this position myself. And I did tell her, I was like, you need to speak to your manager and let them know, before you go in, do the market research, right? First, realize how many hours a week am I dedicating to this, right? How many hours am I actually, like, working hours am I dedicating to running this ERG, whether that's collaborating with people, putting on events, emailing, and like putting together a list of whatever it is. All of that is work, right? Even if it's busy work, doesn't seem like it takes a lot of like brain power, whatever, it's still work, it's labor. So you should be compensated for that. So the way I would do it is just figure out how many hours are you actually doing that type of work. And then how many hours essentially are you paid for your current job, right? And trying to assess, okay, if I'm working X amount of extra over time, right? This is what I need to be compensated. So really including that in a package for either a promotion or some type of compensation, because it's really unfair to not only be the person, like maybe the only person that looks like you at a company advocating for you and not being compensated for it, right? It's extra work, pay me. So that's how I feel about that.
Preach. We've got 3 minutes left. Yes, this is being recorded. For those of you who maybe came late, we'll send out a note with the encore for this. But we have time for maybe like one or two more questions. Anything that's been simmering. I'm scrolling through.
Yeah, I would say, Allison, yeah, so it should be voluntary in the sense that like no one should be forced. Like no one should be like, Cristina, you're the Latina, so you have to lead the Latina ERG, right? Like that's what I mean. It shouldn't be that way. It should be somebody who voluntarily wants to lead it. And I would say the person who leads it and really puts in the majority of the work, that's the person who should be compensated, right? Other people, they may be members and they may help here and there. But really the person who's kind of, and there's usually at least one or two people that really
80-20 rule, like 20% is doing 80% of the work.
Exactly. That's probably was Dan. Dan was the one doing all the work, I'm sure. But yeah, the person who's really leading the charge, and there's always usually one or two, those people should be compensated, right? Yeah, good questions.
Leadership roles within a D&I council. How would you look at leadership roles within a D&I council? Any thoughts? I mean, I have thoughts, but
no, give your thoughts, because I don't really know what a D&I council is. What the hell is that?
So what I've seen at some tech companies, because I work a lot with a number of tech companies, is diversity is not exactly the strong suit for a lot of kind of like small, fast-growing tech companies. And so a D&I council, of course, you really want to capture the voices of authentic people who have lived those lives and bring that diverse perspective and that diversity of thought. The thing is that you may not have a lot of, external characteristics to recruit for a D&I council to help you with your strategy, with your guiding force. And so coming up with a philosophy is really motivating. So if you have a D&I council or some kind of group that handles diversity, equity, inclusion, having a philosophy and having people speak to it makes it inclusive. So allies who maybe look lily white like me can still feel like they can contribute to a broader diversity movement and feel like they are making an impact and making a place more equitable. That philosophy needs to be crafted with people's input. And especially for a smaller organization, making sure that people's voices are solicited to be a part of it. That might mean going out to them and saying, hey, I want you to be a part of this conversation. I think your perspective is valuable. Doing things like anonymous surveys so that people feel more comfortable voicing their opinions. Creating that credo is probably a really effective way of making that D&I council have a mission, and so that people can join and be a part of it. Then the leadership piece, I mean, every organization's different. You might have an executive sponsor. They are, qua some kind of sponsor, but having the person who sees and commits to it is definitely the person who should be compensated, because they're the people who are going to have to stand up and advocate. And that takes guts, and it takes street cred, and it takes work. If that helps. Sorry, I just went on a little soapbox for a bit.
I agree. I was confused. I didn't really know what a D&I council was, but so thank you for explaining that to me. Awesome.
Okay, so we are now at 1:00. I had a blast. Christine, did you have a blast? Jen, did you have a blast? I had a blast. This is great. Okay, we all need to get on with our lives. Thank you all for coming. We'll post out the recording. And thank you again for being a part of our What's Your Number? Our investment for 2021.
Let's work on making workplaces better for everyone, right?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lou.
Hi, Lou.
Bye-bye, thanks.
Bye, everybody. Have a
Bye.
good day.
You too.